Ready to move to the next level in your product career? I'm Shobhit from Intentional Product Manager. Join me as we discuss ways to help you stand out in your job search and your career so you can have more impact and make more money. Hey, welcome to the Intentional Product Manager podcast. With me is our guest, Will Lowrey. Will, great to have you here in the podcast.
Thanks, Shobhit. It's great to be here.
Amazing. So, Will, why don't we begin? Why don't you tell us just, a little bit about yourself, your high-level career journey, and then we'll dig in.
For sure. Yeah, I've been in product for a little over 20 years now, but I definitely went through it like everyone else, kind of came into it sort of backwards. But
Yeah.
I've done lots of different things. I've been a software engineer. I've been in startups with venture-backed startups where we wore every hat, to larger companies, working at a company like Bazaar Voice and Indeed. And so kind of been around the block a few times with different types of companies. So yeah, that's me.
That's awesome. Well, I'm always curious with people who've had a long product career on how they began. Like, how did they get into product? Because one of the things I often hear from product managers I talk to is, Shobhit, my path is not typical. And so I want to know what's your path into product management?
For sure. Yeah, I honestly got a role with a title of product management at a startup. And honestly, I had never heard the title product management before.
Cool.
I was leading the engineering and marketing of the company. I was employee number 4 at this startup. And when we were starting to put together the investor decks and the board and that kind of thing, I saw in there that I was the lead product manager was the title that I was given. That's how I first got introduced to the idea. And so then I started understanding, like, what does that actually mean? And it looked a lot like what I was doing. I was talking to customers. I was deciding priorities. I was working with engineering to figure out ways that we could solve problems. So I had been doing it without knowing I was doing it. And then finally, somebody who knew more than me at the time gave me the title. So that's kind of my journey into it.
That's amazing, given the title.
That's right.
Okay, so tell me, what was life prior to product management? What's your background before you got the title?
For sure. Yeah. So I joke with people that I had 5 different careers before I was 30. And it's a joke, not because it's not true. It's just more that nobody really believes it. So I was a software engineer. I have a degree in computer science. I did that for a number of years. And then I got a bit of the entrepreneurial bug. So I made a pretty big shift from writing code to selling money. I worked in mortgage and finance. I got to leverage a bunch of my software engineering, building out websites and funnels and all those type of conversion things that I could do that people couldn't do back then. It wasn't easy for them. They needed more engineering capabilities. But that wasn't enough. So I did that for a few years. I sold that to a football player, which was kind of neat. And then I went and taught middle school.
You sold that to a football player?
Yeah. So I had gotten a mortgage and finance company. I had a good team of people, and there was a football player. He had played in the NFL for about 20 years, and he had a number of companies. One of them was a title company, and he was launching a mortgage and finance company. And a friend of a friend introduced us, and I said, "Hey, I would love to kind of hand off some of this business." So he brought me in, and I built up his business and handed over my staff and did a 6-month transfer, and then said, "Great, thanks. This was awesome." And then went on, and then I started teaching middle school because, why not do something different?
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's a logical next step.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So I did that for a while. I was a stay-at-home dad for a bit, and then I launched a couple of lifestyle businesses while I was raising 3 children under the age of 3.
Wow.
So web design, web hosting, marketing, lead generation, kind of doing all of those as just a service type business.
Yeah, obviously all the prerequisites to product management.
Right. So, and then of course I took a bit of a stint into seminary, and I was a youth pastor and a interim pastor at a church. So I was preaching every Sunday for 30 minutes.
As everyone does.
Of course.
Totally get it.
Yeah. It's the normal path into product, right?
Perfect. Yeah.
So that was sort of my journey. And then I got back into venture-backed startups.
Sure.
And I thought I was coming in having no intention to do anything with engineering. I was coming in to do their marketing, their SEO, their lead gen. And then, of course, they had no version control software. They had no processes for ensuring that any of the code that their teams were writing would actually not get lost. And it was a multi-million-dollar investment. So that just made my skin crawl. So I jumped into that work again, even though that's had not been my intention, until they ran out of money, as many startups do. But that's when I then ended up in a startup where I ended up doing product management.
That's amazing. Amazing path.
Yeah.
And just like shatters that myth of, oh, my path is not typical. You know,
That's
everybody does undergrad engineering and MBA and then they become a product manager.
Yep.
I just have hardly ever seen that.
For sure. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
Just one sec. Google decided that this is a perfect time to sign me out of the account. So I'm logging back in so I can view our questions. Okay, back. Awesome. So tell me, were there any significant moments along this journey that really influenced your career path and your journey?
Sure. It's one of those things where at the moment, I don't know that I would have realized how much it has influenced my path. But now that I get to look back, I was working at a company called Bazaar Voice. It's a company that almost everyone's used, but nobody knows about. If you read a rating or review at Walmart or Target, that's been collected and then syndicated by Bazaar Voice across an entire network of retailers and brands. So really cool company. No one really knew about it. But I was working there and there was a product leader. His name was Lucas. Lucas was controversial at times. He would say things just to get people to think differently. And I appreciated that because I think sometimes we get stuck in patterns. And Lucas and I were meeting about some of the candidates that we were interviewing for the product team. Okay. And he got really animated and energized about the difference between an average or a mediocre hire versus a great hire and how big of an influence it has on a company. And so we dug into that a lot. And to the point of the culture that was being created for our product team was that hiring was our number one priority. So we needed to adjust our thinking. Our products being delivered were not as important as product leaders as the time and effort we put into getting to know the possible talent, bringing this talent in, evaluating it well, and creating the most amazing team we could. And Lucas is the one who was championing that. And that really opened my eyes to the impact we could have on an organization by the people that we bring in. And that led me down into a whole world of loving the hiring process, the value of that process. I ended up at Indeed, which of course is all about helping people get jobs. So I got to explore that even further. But yeah, I think it really started there. And now here with what we're doing with Intentional Product Manager, it's just an extension of that for me.
I mean, that's amazing. I'm so consistently surprised as how much, if I look at other people and even my own career, how much managers, both good ones and the not so great ones, have influenced career in different ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like some of those things live on. Like some of the things my previous manager at Google just like lives on.
Yeah.
So that's
absolutely
amazing. Okay. Now let's go back and let's make you like sort of seem less wise than you were. Less wiser. I don't know what the term is. So
sure.
Let's say you now go back to like when you're starting product management and you have the lessons that you've collected so far. What would you like try to teach this early product management career Will version of you?
Yeah, I think at the time I didn't see and know how powerful it was to just talk to your users, just talk to your customers. And I think there's so much red tape that companies create or people or the hindrance we create on ourselves to make it complicated. This does not have to be it doesn't have to be incredibly research-based all the time. Sometimes you just need to get on the phone or just get into a Zoom or just go and meet them and say, tell me what you're trying to accomplish. Talk to me about your day. And the things that happen after that are always so interesting to me for a team, particularly. But for an individual, it creates a new level of motivation because you now have listened to them and you've seen the pain and the joy of what they're trying to accomplish. You often get both of those. On a team, you then get to come back and you get to be this passionate advocate for the problems that you uncovered. And that is contagious. Your fellow coworkers want to have that same energy. They want to go talk with customers because they want that energy that you just brought back into the office or into that meeting. And then when you get to turn around and solve a problem quickly and notify the person you just interviewed with, hey, I really appreciate the feedback. Here's how we thought about solving it. Does this seem like this would be better for you? And they turn from someone who might be disgruntled to incredibly powerfully advocating for the fact that you've listened and it's making progress. I mean, it's just so incredibly rewarding. And it's not measured in dollars and cents all the time, though eventually it gets there. But it is incredibly rewarding. And I wish I'd known that earlier so I could have done that more. And I encourage all my teams now, like if you're not on the phone or meeting or interviewing some customer almost every week, you need to. It will absolutely change what you're doing in product.
Love it.
Yeah. So that would be in the early days.
Yeah. It's interesting you say that. And I remember this conversation I had with somebody at Google, and it was this UX researcher. This person's like, oh, I don't know if you're allowed to talk to product managers. I don't know if you're allowed to talk to users.
Right.
And I was like, I'm sorry. Why? Am I not a human?
Yep.
What's wrong with me? It's like, oh, I don't know if you're, qualified. You have the UX research training and everything. I'm like, I don't care what the red tape is. I'll figure my way around it.
Yep.
It's a non-negotiable for me to work here as a product manager and not be able to talk to users.
That's right.
That's just not going to happen.
Yep.
And that is what I think a lot of people need to do is like, that's just a non-negotiable.
Right.
Not talking to customers.
Absolutely. I use it in my interviewing questions of feedback of how do I and my team go and get to talk to customers at this company? And if they don't have a good, clear answer, that's a yellow flag. And if the answer is you can't, then it's a red flag for me.
It's total red flag. Showstopper.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, so that's amazing. Tell us more. So like, as you went on in your career, what are the kind of lessons that you started to learn?
Yeah, when I think about my mid-career, that's when I knew more than just how to launch a feature, function, that kind of thing. I think now that storytelling was so important, and to learn how to do that. It's internal, but it's internal and external. It's an element of marketing to your audience, but you have lots of different audiences, whether it's your team, whether it's your cross-functional teams, it's your leadership, or it's external. And I think being able to understand your audience allows for you to build better products because you craft a narrative with their language in your head. That's, to me, what great storytelling is. It's how do you enter the conversation in your target persona's head that's already taking place, and then just augment and expand on that. And so learning that skill and practicing that often, whether that's in marketing materials or attending some of the biz dev calls and seeing how your product is talked about and how your potential buyers are discussing it and coming up with objections, you need to understand their language. I think that's really powerful in product. And that's, I think mid-career, that's what I would really expand on.
And I mean, could you give us an example, like some places where you leverage the skill of storytelling? For
sure. So I was launching a product for small and medium businesses.
Yeah.
And they were brands. And so they are brand business trying to sell their product at, say, a Walmart or a Target. And they don't have any access to the end buyer because the end buyer relationship is owned by the retail store. And the work that I needed to do was to understand what were all of their pain points. And by going in and then listening to their language, when they talk about things like sell-through, which I had no idea what it meant because I've never been a brand. And what it means is when you put 10 items on the shelf, do you sell through all 10 of those fast enough for the retailer to want to buy more of those? Great. It makes sense. The term now makes sense to me. But knowing those terms and then being able to talk to them about how part of what our product was meant to do for them was to help their sell through velocity go to be greater so that they would sell through more of their product faster and be able to earn more shelf space in their retailers. And I had no concept of that until I started listening to them and then entering that story and understanding their concern of how do you move enough inventory? How do you get rebuys from your big retailers so that your small brand can actually grow? And that we would overcome some of their challenges of reaching directly to the customers on their behalf. And once I told that story, they were like, I have no way to solve this. You solve it, you make it affordable, and you understand my problems. Excellent. I will buy your product and I will keep paying over and over and over again for it because I make more money because I work with you. So that was an example of where understanding the story and the language of them was really important to be able to get our message across.
Love it. Okay. Storytelling. Obviously, a very well talked about topic, very popular.
Yep.
Now, as you went on later in your career, and especially as you're now starting to build teams, manage teams of product managers, what were the core lessons in this phase?
Yeah. So this is where I find that culture happens whether we want it to or not.
Yep.
And if we're not intentional, we just get stuck with what organically happens.
Yeah.
And I think as a product leader, and the leader does not necessarily mean a title, right? You can be a leader without being the boss. There are wonderful leaders at every level in a company. And that's where I think the word leader is important here, is you can lead your team culture. And that's what I think as both a manager and a leader, I have even more opportunity to do that. How do I create a culture of being able to be wrong and not being ashamed of learning and experimenting? How do I create an environment where we assume positive intent in each person, where we can get into a room, one of my favorite phrases my teams have heard in the past is, let's cuss and discuss, and then we'll go have lunch afterwards. And so as long as the nature of the conflict is always about trying to find the best answer to move us forward, and never about the quality of the individual bringing up the suggestions, then we have a good, healthy space for critical thinking, conflict resolution, and ultimately really valuing each other. Like that's what I've learned I really need to create, is an environment where your ideas are valued, your voice has a space. Everyone at the table has an opportunity to speak up and to share their thinking. And they also have a sense of ownership. I think it's Patrick Lencioni in his book of 3 Signs of a Miserable Job, which he might have renamed, but that was the original version.
Yeah.
He talks about the need for people to feel a sense of autonomy, and a sense of knowing how that they progress. How do they put points on the board, or how do they know if they're winning? So if we can create a community in the team that they know what they're expected to do, and they feel a sense of, I know the big decisions and I can make a lot of the 1,000 other micro decisions that need to be made without having to get approval or check in. I think creating a culture like that allows for people to love what they're doing. Even if we don't always agree, that's okay. We don't all have to agree. We're just trying to get to the right outcome. And so I think creating that intentionally is what's really important. And it's what I really believe is one of the best uncovered or unused levers right now in businesses to help them perform better, is to create that culture.
I love I was writing down the phrase cuss and discuss. That's awesome. That just puts like, hey, we're going to be completely honest with each other.
That's right.
We'll talk about the hard things.
Yep.
And then we'll grab lunch.
That's right.
We're still friends, even if we don't agree.
We had that wonderful experience when I was at Indeed. My boss was fantastic. He was very energetic and sometimes very vocal, never at any of us, just with the concepts. I mean, I remember one time he was very upset because we had turned a test off, and he was just yelling, "Turn the machines back on," which of course is a clip from a movie. But and of course we went and turned the machines back on. We discussed it all, and then we're just like, "Hey, all right, everybody, that meeting's done. You've got we know what we're doing. Let's go grab lunch." And we all sat down and we had a great lunch. And It was just great. It's just a wonderful example of living that out. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's awesome. Um, So I'm gonna, like continuing this career journey, I'm gonna bring you now to your awesome role as coach at Intentional Product Manager.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just, before we talk about like the things that you do, I'm just curious about what interested you. Like, why be a coach? What was your motivation behind
Yeah.
this entire
So
thing? I
there,
mean, except for working with awesome people like me, like
of
what was
course.
your real motivation?
No, that's great. So there's two people that have really kind of spoken some truth into my life about this. So one of them is the one who actually sent me the job posting that Sam had posted for this role.
Hmm.
And I met him. His name is Natan. And I met him during COVID because I felt a need to connect with people and give in a moment in the world when things were so chaotic and hard.
Yeah.
So I had just posted up a Calendly link and offered to help anyone in product who wanted to talk and just what do they want to talk about? It was half an hour blocks. I had like 11 of them on my calendar. They filled up in 24 hours. People needed to connect.
Yeah.
Well, one of them was Natan. And it's now been 3-4 years maybe. And he and I still meet almost every 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
We've continued to be great friends. I'm excited for him. He's getting married here very soon.
Nice.
And so but he's the one who saw this job posting and said, Will, this is what you've been doing for me. Not just in the job search, but just in my career. You've been coaching and mentoring me for the last 4 years. You
Yeah.
should go do this.
Mm.
And so that was awesome. And then there's another person, and you know this person as well because he's working with us here, Michael.
Yeah.
Michael and I worked together at Indeed, and I was talking with him about what do I want next. And he and I have continued to stay friends even after working together. We still keep in touch every 2 weeks as well.
Yeah.
But he said, Will, I don't know that, because I was talking to him, I don't know if I want to keep building products per se.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I'm trying to explore what that is. He said, Will, I believe that you're going to build people and you're going to build teams.
Mm-hmm.
And so that whole conversation that we had earlier about building culture is what I'm really passionate about. And Michael kind of inspired me when he said, Will, as soon as I'm a leader at a company and I can bring in someone to help me do that, I'm hiring you to come help me do exactly that for my teams. For every team I go to, I want you there to help me craft that. So that just like, when I think about the next 20 years, what do I do? Well, how do I build people? And so this was an opportunity to meaningfully invest and take my years of experience in it to build people. So that's what I'm here for.
That's amazing. I mean, it's really awesome when other people look out for you and they send you job postings, which sometimes it takes some like objectivity to recognize the right path for you.
Yep.
I mean, just an example here. When I was, hadn't even thought of intentional product manager. That wasn't a thing, and I started this free class where
Mhm.
Sam Feldman, who's my co-founder on one of the programs, he was one of the students in that. So I told my wife that, hey, I'm just testing this class out just for something fun. And she was like, oh, I knew you were going to go into teaching some point in your life as a career, teaching and coaching. I'm
Yep.
like, I don't know that. She's like, I know that.
Yep.
So she was able to give me a pretty good sense. Yeah, I know you. This is where you're headed. It's just happening.
Yep.
And I was like, okay, now I have a lot more conviction behind it.
That's right. It's amazing when you have people who can speak that truth into you and say, this is part of what you're meant to do. This is part of your purpose.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. It's really powerful.
Awesome. So let's talk about what are you focused on these days other than responding to my crazy requests?
No, I think what I spend most of my time on, particularly in the intentional job search side, is working with students on how to bring out all of the great work they've done in a way that the interviewers and the people who are trying to fill roles can have an idea of, if I hire this person, if I hire Joe, this is what we're going to get. And this is how Joe's going to solve our problems. And that's not the same thing as a journey of what all you used to do. It's about crafting that narrative that clarifies how Joe will solve future problems and use examples in the past to prove that it's not just lip service, that they've actually done it. So,
I mean, but let me play devil's advocate.
Sure.
Why do that? Like, just why don't I just tell them, hey, here's all the awesome stuff I've done, and let the hiring manager connect the dots. Figure it out.
One of the things that I share with students often is that I've been an interviewer a lot of times, and I've also had the luxury of working with a lot of companies who are hiring in various roles. And a lot of interviewers are not amazing at interviewing. And that's nothing negative about them. Maybe their kid was sick in the morning. Maybe their boss was upset about them with something. Maybe a project is late and this shows up on their calendar and now they're there. And so our job as coaches and then as the interviewee is to make that interviewer as incredibly good as possible. And we do that. And the way that I tell the students to do that is be prepared, have a well-organized story, use frameworks to help them explain what you did. And a great interview is not one that you land or that you get through, but where the interviewer has a great set of notes to be your internal champion when you're not there. So that's what I tell the students, that this is what we're doing, is we're trying to help you give an answer that allows for that interviewer to be awesome at being your champion when you're not there. And all of a sudden they're like, okay, I get why I need to do this.
Okay, that is so insightful. Let me repeat that. Your goal is to, after the interviewer is over, the interviewer should leave with an awesome set of notes, motivation to be your champion, and like remembers you in some way and thinks you're just the bee's knees. Awesome fit for that.
Yep, that's exactly it.
That is so insightful, and it's so different. I mean, it's so different than how most people approach their narrative or their set of stories right now, right?
Right, exactly. And so that's why we work with them, to help that come through, to give them the structure to do that. I think the other thing, Shobhit, and I know that you are very involved and have practiced a great deal of the mindset side of things. I think that one of the elements of mindset that hinders people to be as successful when they talk about themselves is they have an internal voice that is constantly berating elements of themselves or downplaying their value. And that's just the reality of being human. We have elements where we second guess or we devalue the things that are easy for us.
Yeah.
And so part of being this outside voice for them is to help pull out this great work that they did and help them realize that just because it was easy for them doesn't mean it's easy for everyone, and it has value, and companies need that value. And so let's present that so that they can say, yes, this is worth X. That's why I'm giving you this offer, because I need you to do it for my business. And just help them realize that there's more value than in themselves and in their skills than they likely see in themselves.
That's, I mean, I would add one more thing to this, because that's really amazing when you say that people don't bring out their best elements. It's like, almost paraphrasing what you said, they are blind to what made them so awesome.
You're absolutely right. It's amazing to me, and I shouldn't be amazed. It's more that it's recurring, and yet it breaks my heart, really, when I see someone who downplays, oh yeah, we just launched this thing. I'm like, wait. You launched this thing to 500,000 people, generating X millions of dollars, using 5 other people and some interviews, right? That's how you did this. Let's not pretend like this is easy. Yeah. Right? Do you realize that like 90% of companies that are founded never make it to $1 million in revenue, let alone into tens or more millions of dollars? So like, these are not small things. These are big deals. And so just helping people realize that their day-to-day norm is quite exceptional in a lot of cases.
Love it. So let's talk a bit more about both like the job search and go further into this coaching that you provide. So, in the past, you worked at both startups, you worked at larger companies like Indeed. How do you see the job search differing based on maybe size of company or type or whatnot?
For sure. So I've thought about that a lot, because we do have people who come in who are looking for various things, startups or bigger companies. What does that look like? And I find that in a startup world, there's often a mixed bag of how the journey will go, the job search will go. There's some really awesome things that can happen. One, they can be very motivated. You can get an interview and go through 2 or 3 interviews on a Monday, and you can have a job offer by Wednesday. Like that doesn't happen all the time, but it's possible because they have no red tape. They're a group of 3 or 4 people. If they want to hire someone, they just hire someone. The other side of that, though, is they also don't necessarily have a ton of process.
Yeah.
So you might have a company of 30, maybe they're in a Series B or Series C funding round. They could have gone a bit bigger, but they're still figuring it out, which means you might have to stay on their email a little bit more, remind them that you're still involved because they had to put out other fires, like making sure payroll got in on time or the investor's check cleared or whatever it might be, right? Like all these other things that they have to worry about. So that can be really interesting. It can also mean that you're going to have a lot of behavioral interviews, which is what we prep people for. And you're going to get a couple of like product design or metrics type questions because somebody somewhere read an article, saw a video, or wanted to be like some of the big players, like, oh, we should do this. So, but they won't necessarily know what's great about it. They're just going to go a little bit more on gut feeling than they will on training, data, that type of thing. So that's what I find in startups. In bigger companies, I find that they have more process, more ritual behind it. And in some of the really big companies, they have a ton of effort into the qualification process. But in those mid-level, those sort of medium to large that aren't necessarily your largest tech, I think that they go through this process because that's what somebody created at some point, but they don't necessarily know how to evaluate all of the results to determine things. So it still has a lot to do with opinion and interpretation of what you received, which is why having a great interview and making sure they have great notes can help you win a ton. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have the best skills to do the job and from a hard skills perspective, but clearly you had a great way of communicating. So your soft skills are going to help you win over there. So I think that's an interesting part of it.
Yeah. And it's good to recognize like one of the things I really caught on with is like extreme empathy for the company and the hiring manager and other people, because hiring you is not their core job.
Right.
Okay. And they're under other pressures, and you want to help them succeed in their hiring, and hopefully including hiring you.
Yep.
And that also means not treating, oh, they haven't responded for 2 days. It's like, I must suck. I must be awful.
That's right. It's not about you.
Life gets busy.
That's right. They're just busy. So as you see all these people look at all these different companies, what are like some common things that you think product managers should demonstrate more in terms of their skills or qualities to really succeed in their job search in today's market? Yeah. And I think my answer would have been different if you'd asked me 1.5 years or 2 years ago. And so the answer I give now and what I work with our students on understanding is business outcomes have become so much more important. And that's true not just in the startup world. And it's very, very true in the startup world. Investors are not investing for growth at all costs. They're looking for profitability and a path to that. Money is more expensive now. So they're wanting to distribute in ways where it's going to come back. But I think even in bigger companies where they're realizing that the efficiency of their teams and their ability to deliver value, business value, not just I showed up and took action as opposed to I got results.
Yeah.
And I think it's more than time for this. I think this is a great way to think about products is products do need to deliver real value. And in a for-profit business that's often measured in some form of revenue or retention or upgrades or cross sales or whatever it might be. But you can also be in a nonprofit where it's around mission or a mission that you're fulfilling more. Those are great. Like you can exchange the word value for lots of things. It's not just dollars and cents. I just wanted to make sure people are clear on that. But talk about what you're doing from a business outcome. And if you're not sure with what you did and why it mattered to the business, go figure that out because somebody decided that this was worth doing. And to drive your business forward, you need to know how this attaches to it. And you need to talk about your work from that business value, because I think that's what people are looking for right now.
One more point to add, because what you just said was very insightful. And maybe just reinterpreting this is some of the best product managers, they don't have to be the ones who decide that context in which that feature exists.
Mm-hmm.
But they need to know it and they need to be able to communicate it.
That's right.
You know,
It may not be your choice, but you still have to do it well. And if you don't know why, like if you don't understand the overall why, you need to figure it out, because otherwise you're going to have a hard time really delivering on that why.
And I mean, I know we're talking about job search, but that is just also so important to communicate to get your team motivated and
That's right.
really excited that, hey, this big company goal and we are going to contribute to it by doing X in this way.
Mm-hmm.
That rationale is magic. And your engineers care about it no matter what people say that, oh, engineers don't care about that.
Sure.
They just want to build features.
Yep.
Just not true.
No.
Just not true.
No. Agreed.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So let's talk a bit more about coaching. Tell me, what do you enjoy most about coaching product managers?
I think I can't remember that. I should have looked up the author's name, but there's a book titled "So Good They Can't Ignore You," and one of the concepts in there is the bad advice, or the quote unquote bad advice that Steve Jobs gave of do what you love.
Yeah,
and and it's not that that's a bad statement; it's that it's an incomplete statement.
Yep.
And it's that we need to like something enough to get great at it. And then we will love it because we love being great.
Totally.
And so I love the craft of product management. I love the storytelling. I love the understanding people's problems. And I love trying to problem solve, which is, to me, what we get to do in product management. And now I see this very similarly. So coaching people is they are now part of that product that needs to be understood and encouraged and crafted so that they can go and succeed the way that they want. And so I still approach it from a very product management lens. What's working, what's not, what are we trying to accomplish? How do we measure success? But I think now it's just a different medium that I'm working in. It's not as many zeros and ones, and it's more relationships, conversations, the emotional journey, the mindset, the tough love, the encouragement. Those are all wonderful things that I enjoy exercising. And so that's what got me here.
Love it. Love it. And people love your coaching. They often
Thank you.
I get to know that. So tell me more, like, how would you describe your style of coaching?
Yeah. So I was a teacher. I taught middle school for a while. So there's a little bit of an element of that where I approach things with an educator mindset of how do I provide scaffolding approaches to learning something new. So there's that element. There's that teacher element. I'm also a parent, and I've spent a lot of time trying to create independence and capabilities in my kids. So there's pieces of that as well, of trying to give people enough room to scrape their knees and learn from the process while giving them the encouragement that they're not alone and that they're making that progress that they need. There's also an element of, so my mom was a word of affirmations person. So growing up, I never left the house without being told that I was loved, that I was beautiful, that I was cared about, that I looked great today, whatever it might be, but strong words of affirmation. And I think in this tough journey of the job search, people need to be encouraged. So there's an element of me that's the encourager. And then this is all this blend. And then there's the final piece, which my father's work was primarily conflict resolution. Like his job was like world peace. That's what he did.
Wow.
Which is really cool. Except when in a family where you sometimes just want to be angry and like, let's talk about that. I'm like, dang it, Dad.
No, I just want
to yell at you. But I think a part of that is also that there is some tough love that goes involved in conflict resolution. And I think I try to blend those things. So I try to encourage. I also try and push in a way that will help them be their best selves and understand that that's the intention. And I have a lot of frameworks on how I try to help support people. And sometimes it means that I model. So just last week, I had some people that I was working with. They were really struggling to get the feedback in their narratives. And I had worked on their story for a couple of times. And I said, we got on a call and I said, can I just tell your story to you?
Yes.
And you tell me, am I missing pieces? How does this go?
Yeah.
And they're like, sure, let's do it. And I re-record it. And then I tell their story. I tell the story they wrote with energy and inflection in various points. And they're like, that's fantastic. That's my story. Now I get what you're saying. And I get why what I wrote is not what you said. And now I can work on that. And sometimes that just shortcuts us there.
Yeah, 100%.
But I also don't want to do that for everyone, because some of them need to, they need some iterations on their story to really work through the details and figure out what's important. Because I don't know, I didn't do the work. So,
I mean, this is one of the things people love about intentional job search is like personalized. Even the style of coaching needs to be adapted
for sure
to different people. Like I remember I've done similar things. In one case, there's this person, Sandesh, who went to Amazon working with us. And, he was struggling with this, tell me about yourself. And finally, in a mock interview, I was like, okay, Sandesh, let me try.
Yep.
So I tried. And then he was like, okay, is that recorded? Because I'm going to just say that. And that's exactly what I needed. Like after some point, the iterations had stopped and he needed just like somebody else to do it. And now in other cases, you just got to help them work through it.
Yeah,
so
for sure.
I love that aspect, Will.
Yeah.
So you're bringing all these elements. Last thing as we wrap up, your thoughts and your tips for people who are currently in the market for a new role within product management.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that I don't know that I realized until I came to IPM. Not in the sense of I couldn't have articulated it, but I felt it so real, is the importance of a couple of elements. I think mindset is a huge part. And the fact that you have mindset coaches on staff is amazing to me. And then I think the community element is really, really important. And then stealing from, as you can tell, I like to quote from other people who've thought about these things. James Clear's Atomic Habits, he talks about that we don't rise to the level of our goals, but we fall to the level of the systems.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that is really important, is to have a system. Your job search is not something that we tend to practice often. And we don't necessarily define what are our systems to make sure that we're delivering good interviews, good applications, good outreaches, good networking, and all of these things. And I think IPM does a great job of providing a structure for that. And I think that's one of the advantages of joining a program like that. But I think no matter what it is, you have to do that. I think that if otherwise you're putting too much up to luck, and
totally.
I don't love luck as a strategy. It's like using hope. It's not a strategy, right? Like hope is not a strategy here. So having these systems of mindset to work, of consistent delivery, of building systems to improve, I think are really important for anybody who's in the market right now.
I love it. It is one of the mantras I generally follow outside IPM as well. It's like, hey, if I'm looking to do something new, it's like, like two things. One is who, there's a book, Who Not How.
Yes.
I believe that's the title. I might be mistaken.
I have it right over there.
Oh, yeah? Okay. That's awesome.
Great book.
Yeah. Which is, okay, is there somebody who's world-class who can just do it for me? Your job search, nobody can do it for you. Then it's about, is there someone and some system that can help me do it so much more efficiently? And how do I learn from other people's mistakes? Because look, I like to be perfect.
Yep.
No, I'm never perfect, but I would rather learn from other people's mistakes than my own.
For sure.
And that's one of my favorite podcasters. Wow, I always forget his name. Alex Hormozy.
Oh, yes. I like Alex.
He does podcasting mostly on business, but like some of the times he says, it's like, hey, when you buy knowledge, that's the best thing you can buy, because now you have these skill sets that nobody can take away from you.
That's right.
They can steal your cryptocurrency, your stock portfolio can go down. This will not go down.
Yep.
Awesome. So one last question, like any general advice about product management careers, any suggestions for them?
I think the advice for people in their career is that no one's going to care about your career as much as you. And so take time to figure out what it is that you want. So for me, for example, I've decided that there's a level at which I don't necessarily want to pursue further from climbing the corporate ladder. There are other things in my life that I want to achieve. That was not the easiest decision to come to because I was so used to pursuing the next thing. Yeah. But being honest about what it is that you really want and value. And I think we talk about this show, but internally about sort of what is their strategy and how do they get clarity on what matters. Yeah. I think spending time doing that it's sharpening your tools. It's sharpening your axe, right? What is it? If you was going to cut down a tree, if I had 5 hours to do it, I'd spend 4 hours sharpening my axe and an hour chopping it down. Well, I think knowing what it is that you really want out of your career and particularly out of your next step, mapping that out. What skills do you want to gain? What exposure do you want to have to certain capabilities or teams? Do you want to be in B2B or do you want to do SaaS or do you want to work more with engineering or do you want to do more with customers? Like, what does that look like? Yeah. And then pursue that with, once again, I'm stealing from so many people, with like gazelle intensity, right? So Dave Ramsey talks about that in his financial pieces. Do this with a great deal of passion, as if a lion is chasing you and you're the gazelle. Run like crazy towards that thing. And I think there's a lot of value in knowing what you want to pursue and then going all out for that thing.
I love it. There is no rat race. It's all in your brain.
That's right.
Just choose your own path.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing all these thoughts about, lessons from your own career, about coaching and your advice for product managers. I know this will be well received. I know people will be very thankful. How do they connect with you?
Well, I mean, you can always hit me up at at Intentional Product Manager. So Will at intentionalproductmanager.com. Welcome to hit me up there. Of course, you should join the program and then we can work together. That'd be great.
Absolutely.
But yeah, those are a couple of great places to find me. And you can reach me on LinkedIn as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Will.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hey, be sure to check out our website at intentionalproductmanager.com to see how you can level up in your career.